Somebody start the show. Okay, good. Oh my God. My thing keeps messing up on that intro. I don't know why. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 106 of Tactical Crouch. I'm KickedTripod, joined by Yiska and Volamel, and we are going around the league checking in with our favorite franchises. So naturally, as early as possible, we brought on the Florida Mayhem to discuss with them about what's going on, and none other than GM for the Florida Mayhem. Yeah. Welcome back to the show. Hello. Good to see you.
Yep, second time. Happy to be back.
Second timer, third time you get a jacket. So,
oh, all right.
Oh, dang.
That's the big one.
I don't think I'm going to be invited. You guys aren't going to want to shell out for the jacket.
We can at least do a Race the Mayhem tee.
A t-shirt? Yeah, I'll come on for a t-shirt.
There we go.
Fair enough. Yeah. So speaking of, I mean, I gotta say, I don't know if we should thank you or be angry at you, Albert, because early on in the season, Yiska started up something called Race the Mayhem. The idea was we'd set a fitness goal based on the number of wins the Florida Mayhem would have, and I think Yiska was a little bit more skeptical on that win number than we are now seeing. I mean, in hindsight, right? And right now, like Yiska says too many more wins, he's gonna have to chop off a leg. So
that's the thing is, like, of course, like a lot changed. I'm definitely not backing out of anything. It's just it's an interesting season how it went, right? Like you guys are now playing exclusively the Boston Uprising, seemingly. Like at least that's what my weight tells me is happening. So I'm currently losing. I'm losing, especially if we are considering the bonus wins from the tournament.
Yeah,
and something like I'm already happy for the break. I'm gonna be honest. Like I need some time to catch up.
Yeah, well, our team's not taking much of a break, so we're right back at it. We're actually back to practicing today, so we took a week off and we're back at it. So
much deserved.
Hopefully more wins to come. Fortunately or unfortunately for you, I think they're coming either way. Personally, what
are you practicing?
What are we practicing?
Yeah.
That's a secret. That's not relevant to the discussion. I don't think.
That's hearsay, sir. I gotta figure out if I need to search for this. Like, if you're telling me, like, maybe you're practicing no hero pulls and Yaki can keep playing Tracer, then I have a problem.
Well, actually, I don't know what we're practicing because we're still waiting on the format from the league. But I think we'll get to that part later.
Yeah. All right. Intro banter has concluded. Customary of every podcast. Intro banter done. Thank you everybody for hanging out, coming to us, tuning in with us live today. We really appreciate it. For those who keep asking, thank you so much for asking, by the way. We're not partner yet, but we're still going strong for it. We're just going to keep acting like we don't have it. So we're trying to get as many concurrents on the live show, 75 or above, and we're well over that. So thank you everybody for doing that. Big thank you to all of our patrons and all of our subs. We love you all. Let's get into the news and talk about the things. Thanks to our patron producers, Battlecrab Pin, Wolshin, Charlie L, Audio Compass, Porkchop, Sammy, Kasha67, Kuchi Kopi, Shara Picasso, Nathan Your Misery, Hunter Tane, Refine Bean, and Rex Zane. Thank you so much for the support of your support of the show. Go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch if you want to support. And today we get to Yiska and Joe get to go off because Korean Overwatch was back into the golden age for just a brief moment. Just a shimmer in the sky, a brief glimpse. It was great. We saw former Lunatic-Hai versus former RunAway, and we got to see a little show match combined with hero bands and some cool things. How you feeling? I mean, how was that for you two? You two are always, I think stuck in a lot of ways in Apex sometimes, and so you got that little that fix back.
Yeah, it was fun to see the old stage, and it was impressive to kind of see OGN come out after not doing the production, not having that workflow after however many years it's been, and come out and look like they haven't missed a beat is impressive. Yeah, it was really fun. It was fun to kind of like feel like it was back then. It was like 5 a.m. I'm incredibly lethargic, trying to like piece together what this could mean, or like any kind of like storylines for the next day. And yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. Sad to not see everybody involved with those teams. Like, it would have been cool to get everybody involved, but obviously with some of the logistics, some people are doing military service and some people are I don't know where they're at these days, but it was fun regardless. It was fun to see like a weird format. It was fun, but kind of weird to see like the bands and stuff. That was kind of a head scratcher, but all in all, was a good time. Well, I'd lie if I didn't well up at the intro and all of the I get it's. It was a good time. It was a good time.
I forgot that Overwatch League Daily, I used the beginning part of the Apex intro, that part was the beginning of Overwatch League Daily. I forgot that I just ripped that straight from there. I never got in trouble for it, thankfully. I think it's because it was Overwatch. It's from the Overwatch soundtrack as well. But when I heard that, I was like, I remember ripping that. That was a good time. So, yeah, Yiska.
You know what I realized about this? Apex Season 3 started a day after I turned 30. So basically, this has been around for my entire boomerhood. And if we want to call it that. And yeah, it's like, personally, I really liked the match. I also thought that I was surprised how serious it was taken. Like, there was definitely some people that wanted to show themselves and present themselves towards the league. Of course, also still the some of the Overwatch League players, or like soon to be once again, like Haxal, of course. But I also must say, I thought the rookie match, or the Prodigy match, if you want. I'm not sure what the Future Champions. Yeah, something like this. That was a great idea as well.
Yeah.
I'm not in position to say if the selection was good, because I haven't watched any Contenders Korea. But as a concept in general, that's an amazing thing. And like, maybe we could determine something like that for all of Contenders and that would require to be given, for instance, like someone to really sit down, hone out, like measure out how to fairly distribute player of the match type of awards, even for Contenders, and then just inviting, seemingly based on that, if that's possible. Very possible that support will never get a player of the match, or like one, and that guy gets it then. But the entire concept of it is, I think, also highly portable into other regions, and would help create these storylines of like, oh yeah, you remember he was in that match, like, of the promising rookies, and like now he gets into the league, so we have some background. Someone looked at their talent and deemed them one of the best 12 players, blah blah blah, or even just like one of the 2 best in their role from the rookies of that region. I think that's a really solid idea. Like, I loved it.
Like to see it happen in other regions. If there's going to be another break after the June tournament, that'd be pretty cool to see. I'd like to see it pop up and be regular, where it's like, okay, these are the promising players, these are people to look out for. That because they're playing in these regular kind of show matches and community-esque tournaments.
I think I don't know. I'm a huge basketball fan, so it's not a new concept. Like, yeah, like in basketball, there's the All-American games, right? There's like high school, and then college. I think college, there's not really a. It's just a March Madness. There's not really a All Stars for it. But I think that like an All Stars or a Rising Stars type thing for Overwatch and Overwatch contenders would be very good.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That'd be great. I was gonna be one of my first questions is like, is this something that we could or should see in the other regions? Because obviously this was only Korea, but there's obviously other major regions that people are watching and participating in. And I personally, I would love to see this integrated some way into an Overwatch League broadcast. You know, whether it's, and it's tough, right? Like, how do you integrate it? Like, I would love to, you know, I come from hockey, and, you know, hockey, there's kind of like big gaps between periods. It's like roughly the time to play an Overwatch map. And I would just love to like have that, just sandwich that right in there and play an Overwatch map or whatever. But that's probably not very feasible. But I mean, I feel like that would be something that would be really great for the tier 2 of Overwatch all around, because we have to be honest for a second and say that, you know, tier 2 Overwatch is struggling.
Hurting.
Yeah, it's struggling
Most
to kind
definitely.
of get the passion behind, the views behind, the familiarity. I mean, even for us, like we cover mostly Overwatch League, and between covering Overwatch League and a full-time job, like, good luck watching Korean contenders, right? Like, it just like we get to cherry pick a few games here and there as best as we can, and even then, it usually comes at the cost of something else.
Yep. Pretty much. There's not much with new titles kind of popping up and trying to gain a footing or just get familiar with that. Doesn't leave a ton of time to watch regular season. I try to make it a point to watch at least the playoffs, but even then it's tough to warrant, you know, watching Lucky Future get, you know, a mud hole stomped in their rears and, you know, come out the other side of it. God bless that retirement home. But yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah, I think if Al did something like this, I'm sure there'd be a ton of viewers. Pretty simple to attach a sponsor to it, pitch to a sponsor. I feel like, but you know, I don't know what the links of their sponsor contracts are. If that's even feasible this year. But you know, I think it's definitely a really good suggestion and something that's like proven to work, right? Like being a McDonald's All-American for basketball is like a huge accomplishment, or you know, the Jordan Brand Classic. You know, there's so many chances for players to kind of get recognized in sports in the farm system. So don't see why it should be any different for esports.
I'd love to see that. Like, I'm not super familiar with the McDonald's All-American, but award, but having something sponsor tied into or integrated into an award system for contenders, I think that'd be a definite way to get them recognition and also drive some of the narratives coming into the league. Because I think one of the big things that I looked at the show match and I said, well, this isn't the best Overwatch being played. Like, it's obviously kind of messy and kind of all over the place and chaotic, but it's the names, it's the stories, it's what we remember, it's that nostalgia. And it's like, well, why is this any different? Why is this not drawing the same views in the Overwatch? Like, we also have stories, we also have narratives, but they're not as, you know, these aren't the legends. We're not building them up as well as we could. So I think starting from the ground floor and working up in that sense, I think would set us up for success in the future when we have, you know, a two-time, I don't even know if this even makes any sense, but a two-time McDonald's All-American, you know, contenders player coming up into the league and, you know, doing well on this team, that kind of builds up their story, builds up their legend. And when they end up retiring, we can have those show matches and we can have those performances, because right now it's not necessarily, we're not there yet. The second generation of kind of professional players aren't being built to be these stars. And I think we all need to do that better.
So
one thing,
go ahead.
Sorry. One thing that I also wonder is around these type, or like specifically these players, I always felt that the Korean fandom and our Western fandom were there for different reasons, right? Like, because it was hard for us to really, like, we don't have that many touching points in terms of like getting to know these players and whatnot. So in that way, it was almost a little bit more traditional sporty, in the sense that like you build the myth of a player. You don't really know him that much. You only know him by, like the stories and the achievements and like how they maybe react from their facial features, like how they are in the moment. But you don't really get to see them talk on a lot like it is in esports, right? Like, in the West, like where you have the access to a personal player stream and you get a different idea. And it's like, very often, like you think, okay, this player is probably like this, and then you watch the stream and it isn't that case, right? You have a very different relationship. So, that I always wondered how much that differed, like these two different communities and how they perceived that to be the case, because I feel like this is even more special in the sense that we have so few touching points between the Korean and the Western community. Like there's stories that are dominating the Korean scene at times that don't even get here.
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
Like because we have like 2 or 3 funnel points, and that dictates like what permeates our barrier in that regard, right?
I mean, maybe, but I think a similar, like, if you were to do like what Lunatic-Hai and RunAway did in the West, it would probably be like old Rogue versus old Selfless. Like what?
Yeah.
Do you think that would bring a lot of viewership? I personally think a lot of Western fans would turn in for that, right? So I think it's part of. I think there are similar storylines, but I think for Koreans, for like Korean Overwatch, it's a lot. There's just been a lot more LANs, right? There's been a lot more LAN events.
Yeah.
A lot more opportunities to kind of capture the raw emotions. Also, like when you're at the tier 2 level, I think the emotions and it's a lot more. Like it means a lot more, right? A win means a lot more. A loss is like much more devastating because in the league, right? There's guaranteed contracts, right? You lose, you're still getting paid. In Apex, like people, they weren't getting paid that much. Like this is they're basically fighting for their lives, like every time they get on that stage, especially for a team like RunAway. Like I don't know, I don't know anything about Lunatic-Hai contracts, how if they paid them a lot or whatnot. But like for RunAway, like an org that was built from essentially nothing, it's a very different. Like the fans that you get like on the come up is like they're a lot stickier than then you're just like, okay, here's your franchise, right? Like it's just a different feeling.
Yeah.
Totally. Like I remember it being a big deal when they got their like their kind of apartment and they got like washers and dryers and like they kind of showed that process, and it was it was wholesome, but it was like it was an achievement, right? Like this is a team that went through so much and has faced relegation and faced disbandment and tried to get sponsors and couldn't, and now they have, and now they get to
lost
play
the
with
washer
relax.
dryer, by the way, in Vancouver.
Yeah, on the move.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's just like the process of being with them throughout the journey.
Yeah.
Where it's different if you just started when they're at the top, where it's like, okay, you don't relate to them as much because it's like, right, the average league salary is 6 figures. They're getting 6 figures to play a video game. It's like, like I think to the average viewer, it's they're probably not making 6 figures, and they're like, that's just kind of foreign concepts. And like they're just playing video games, suck it up,
Right.
like whereas opposed to like RunAway, it's like they're struggling, they're fighting for their lives when they're on stage. Just different
that
feeling.
humanization, that kind of human condition that we all kind of look at in art and media. It's definitely an apparent, and something which we can tie into later, I think would be great to see with these tournaments. I'd love to get like a inside look into like a real inside look, not just the fun kind of half montage interviews behind the scenes. I want like cameras on at all times during these runs and like seeing that. I'd love to have been seen, like especially your team, Albert, like making this crazy run nobody really saw coming. I mean, I think maybe some pundits would argue differently, but not one that I'd necessarily predict, and was pleasantly surprised and happy to be wrong on. I would have loved to have seen like, Yaki's face giving some comments, KuKi, explaining during the match. Like that would have been sick content. And I hope that we get that with this continued tournament structure. I hope that'd be something cool. I'd definitely consume.
Yep. Let's there's a few interesting things I think about the format here that we probably should discuss. There's a couple of things that were tried, and they augmented / removed the 2-2-2 roll lock.
Yeah.
And introduced bans. And the teams banned heroes for the other team in a snake style. So team 1 bans, then team 2 bans 2, and team 1 bans 2, and then team 2 for the audio listeners who aren't familiar with the format. And so there's 4 total, and kind of similar to what Overwatch League does now is 2 DPS, 1 healer, 1 tank. I believe it went the support first, then the tank second, and then the 2 DPS third and fourth. And then at map 3, 1 hero gets unbanned. Map 4, a second hero gets unbanned. And at map 5, a third hero gets unbanned. And they tried this out, and we saw some similarities there. I believe Orisa was banned both times. Yep. Baptiste was banned 3 out of the 4 times. And then
Brig was banned once.
Yeah, Brig was banned once. Echo was banned. Was it all 4 times?
I'm not sure. I passed out like halfway through the
very,
final.
very close to that, highly for sure. And then I believe
May was a big one.
May was one, and we did see Sombra banned once.
Yep.
Trying to remember the last one. Sorry,
I think they get a good idea of like what this looked like.
We saw this kind of immediate ban meta go through. But Albert, I'd be really interested in your thoughts on what are your thoughts on this sort of team-oriented hero or like team-driven hero ban format for Overwatch League, just in general.
I don't know. It's hard to say without seeing it in action, because our teams would definitely ban differently. You'd see. I would think you would see much more like particular bans based on certain teams. Like you play Fuel, like you ban Widowmaker, so Decay can't play Widowmaker, right? Whereas Fuel, if they their counter ban for maybe Tracer, right? It's like, okay, well you don't like Yaki doesn't get play. Like I don't think the bans would be as similar as you saw in the show match. And also with scrims, the different things happen. Like I think there's just so many variables to consider. That's you have potentially 8 different heroes banned, right? Like that's a lot of variance. Like how does that affect the game? How are coaches thinking about that? It's a lot. It's like an additional. It's like many layers of complexity added on to your game strategy, and it's like that. It's not a simple thing to optimize, because that's what our coaches would try to do, and teams would like, how do we, And I think you probably see some sort. You probably can't do this by hand. It'd be some sort of like running it through a program, like running different simulations and seeing like which one looks the best to you. So yeah, I think it's just super hard to say. It's a lot of variables, and plus like the unban per map. Then it's like, okay, the first ban, like what should we ban first? There's so many variables. I think it's really hard to call.
I also think there might have been some sort of gentleman's agreement. Like, like imagine banning Lucio as Team Slime against Team Toby.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine me like, Toby, you don't get to play Lucio now.
Or like Runner, you can't play Lucio. Or like, no, Genji was banned, right? Like everyone wants to see Hoxel and Genji.
Right. Yeah. You just
if you were actually playing Hoxel, Genji would be a perma ban. It's like you just can't play this hero. Like even if you. Because Hoxel's just that good on that hero. Like I would just ban Genji every single time.
So you'd probably have to implement like some sort of save system as well, right? Like you can save 2 heroes, and then you ban 4 heroes.
You think?
And then an hour and a half later, we actually get to watch Overwatch League.
That okay. There's a lot. Like, have you seen, John? Did you see how it worked? Because there was protect. Like you ban 4, then each map. You can protect 1 ban.
Oh, they did have a protection. I just missed it.
Yeah, no. Like,
so it's a ban per map.
So, no. Well. So you ban 4 for the entire series, and then each consecutive map, one of these bans falls away by your choice. So let's say you want to play. Yeah, like you want to play Echo, then on map 2, then you can. You protect the ban, and then the other 3 heroes remain banned, and that then keeps happening until map 5, where no bans.
I think the rules in general and how they were explained, and then what actually was shown was definitely muddled, because I remember after one map of being played, they went back to kind of a pick ban screen, and then they started undoing things, whereas the rules weren't necessarily explained.
I think this is a good illustration of also, like, if you guys are having trouble explaining the ban system, you guys watch this, like, imagine being a spectator and trying to understand what's going on. Like, it also has to be like spectator friendly and viewer friendly. And I don't think this current iteration, as a pro, you're like, oh, that's cool. Like, or as a high level, understander of the game, it's like, this is a cool concept. But I really don't think for your average viewer, people would even understand what's going on. They're like, okay, so like Genji's banned, or like Genji's not banned now. Like, I thought it was banned, now it's like unbanned. Like, just too confusing.
Yeah. To be fair, I am the dumbest person making Overwatch League content that exists right now. So it's not hard to have something fly past me. But
another big gripe, kind of to your point, is that because this game's so flexibility based, and that one of the core concepts and tenets of the game is the ability to change heroes on the fly. Mm-hmm. If I'm like a new viewer and I'm looking at this, it's like, oh well, why don't they just play Genji? And if you're in the game, you really don't have anything on the UI explaining to you that, hey, this is banned. And I think it could be something applied to like the hero pool system as well, where it's like, okay, well, here's the heroes that they can't play. Right. These are what's banned. So you as a viewer go, okay, I see that they can't switch to these, so I have to change my own thinking and be a little bit more accurate on what I'm talking about.
But I also think fundamentally for like viewership in the league, you want to see DPS players. You want to see players on their signature heroes as much as you can. Obviously, the hero pools, it's like you might not see them for a week, but like, at least at like worst case scenario, if like their hero's banned every other week, you're still getting to see them play that hero theoretically every other week, right? Which is far better than, like GOATs, right? Like they don't want to revert back to where you see Carpe and Zarya permanently, or you see like Sayaplayers on Brig, right? Nobody wants to see that. And I think bans kind of, you're at risk of that happening, because if you are that good at that hero, it will get banned when you introduce high stakes. Like, it's just gonna happen. Like, yes, the viewer wants to see Carpe on Widow, the other team doesn't want to see Carpe on Widow. Yeah. They're like, no, like that's dumb. Like, as a competitor, why would you let that happen? You wouldn't.
It's also, I think we gotta be very careful with our language when we say hero bans, because the type of hero bans that it is there's a monumental difference to the ban systems you can think of. Right. It's like, what if we ban all but 6 heroes? Would be 1 ban, that's hero bans. Yeah. Or we just ban 1 per map, that's hero bans. Oh. And like, we keep switching every map, or we can protect, or, like, hero bans doesn't tell you anything. And it also definitely doesn't tell you what the part of, what the work it requires for the coaches is and whatnot, right? Yeah. What kind of a setup you need, how long it takes, all this type of stuff, right? Like, hero bans ain't hero bans. So, still, that was one thing that I found very interesting, and I wanted to ask Albert specifically here, because I know KuKi has been vocal about hero pools adding a ton of work to his schedule. And Flame said on Twitter that he thought that hero bans would reduce the amount of time that would be needed to prepare. Now, virtually the only way, and initially that statement very much infuriated me, how you can be in a room of coaches microing out, like, and having set strategies and rotations and like what ifs. I think the only rationale to arrive at that point is to say we don't have that anymore. That's not how we are coaching Overwatch anymore. We're only coaching heuristics. Nobody's running these set like rotations. Okay, we're going here high ground with our that pick. Nobody does that anymore. We stop coaching like this, and then maybe coaching can ease off in that regard, because there's too much complexity to plan for. So the coaches might as well not do it and put their effort into teaching players to make good decisions on the fly.
I mean, I think that's you can see that in the games. Like, there's not really, you don't see many set plays, like things that you'd easily identify as like, oh, this is just a set play. Like this set play is like their first fight approach. You know, like, okay, this is how we're going to approach the first fight. If we see these heroes, then we swap, right? That's like the extent. You don't see like these super complex like strategies. So like think of like Meta-Athena, right? Where they have like super complex like strats. You don't really see that. It's mostly just back to basics. Because you don't have time to refine out like everything. It's just a lot of experimentation in the first. So like, I don't know if KuKi's talked about this or any coach has talked, but basically the first half of the week for most teams is just you're just throwing stuff at the wall. You're like, oh, does this work? Does that work? Maybe we copy something that we saw in scrims. Maybe we come up with our own idea. Maybe our players have a good idea, and we use that. So yeah, just seeing what sticks, and then on top of that, you have to figure out your lineup because most teams have. I mean, every team has. Not every team, maybe, but most teams have more than 6 players. There's someone that can be rotated in depending on what needs to be played. And so, like the first half, you haven't even figured out your lineup yet. You haven't figured out your comp, which means you can't figure out your lineup. So it's like midway through, then it's like, okay, finally, like, all right, you just have to pick at that point. Like, say Wednesday comes up or Thursday comes up, and you have a game on Saturday. You're just like, all right, I don't feel 100% about this, but this is the best we're gonna be able to. This is the most practice we're gonna be able to get before I have to pick a comp. And it's like, okay, maybe we're like 70%. Like we think this will work, and that's what we're going with. And we just have to play whatever those players. Because then the next 2 days, the next day is hammering out like the synergy there, the basics on the comp, how we want to execute it versus all the other possible comps. So it's just a lot of work. And I think the only way it wouldn't be more work is if there was like not even a general's agreement. It'd have to be like a league mandated, like you cannot practice over X amount of hours as a team. That's the only way it would be the same or less. Yeah. Because otherwise, every team's like an owl is going to just practice. If they can, they'll practice. They'll add an extra block, right? They'll do extra to try to make up for that not lost time. But in a way, it's lost time, right? Compared to like knowing what the meta is going forward and just having to refine the meta. It's figure it out. Okay, this is the best we can get at by Wednesday, by Thursday. We just got to go with it. So they're just naturally going to add an additional block. So I think season 1, I think there weren't that many teams doing like 3 days, whereas like I'm pretty sure most teams in the league are trying to do 3 scrims a day now. At least we are doing it. But yeah, I know season 1, like a lot of teams were just doing two scrim blocks a day.
Yeah, I think that the only other way to make it so that teams don't over practice is come up with a state of the game in which not overworking and going super hard, but actually taking downtime has a higher benefit. And because the diminishing returns on more practice make it so that maybe 10 hours of practice will give you better results than 12 or 14.
Right.
And that theoretically is possible, I think, with like definitely rigid metas, like where everyone already kind of knows. And there's something to be said about rest times during those metas. Of course, that's not a feasible solution anymore, as we probably can all agree that people want the diversity, and I think that's firmly settled in. But maybe there's other ways to make it so that additional practice after a certain point is disincentivized over more practice that isn't a hard rule. And I'm not sure what kind of a game we would look at in that regard. Like just theoretically, right? Like it's a really dumb idea, but just to explain what could be the case is like, what if each player could only play one hero ever? So this player would then only have to learn that hero and hone the strategies, his understanding of the specific comp he's put in. Of course, terrible idea, but that player then wouldn't have to, stretch himself thin into learning other mechanics and being able to play all the other comps against all the other comps while playing a hero they aren't used to. Of course, completely infeasible idea, just like one of those ideas where the system would make it so that people probably wouldn't over practice, over rest times, especially when they have a performance coach to tell them, okay, like chill out here. This is legitimately not helping you win games.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, I think it's early days in esports, I think, or at least for Overwatch League even. A lot of format changes, a lot of like every team has a different coaching structure. Like when you look at traditional sports, right? Everyone pretty much has like the same positions. Like you need team doctor, like performance, trainers, like they're all, it's very standardized, like the coaching structure. Whereas I think for esports and, Overwatch specifically, like there's variety there, people have different ideas. Some people need like, oh, we need a bunch of position coaches, or like, no, we need a strategic coach. We need a head coach. Some teams are like, no. Our head coach should also be the strategic coach and know, top down. There's just a lot of different philosophies when it comes to building coaching structures, and then your coaching structure determines your practice, and or part of it your coaching structure determines your practice, but also like your personnel, right? And I think an all Korean team is like the Korean teams that come from contenders are used to practicing a certain way, and I find that they tend to want to just import it into OWL, right? And then if you're on a mixed roster, the Western players are used to practicing slightly. I mean, I don't know about slightly, but maybe definitely less. It depends on the person, the team they're on. Just definitely Western players as a team practice less. I'm not saying overall hours is probably similar. Like they play ranked like the Koreans do and everything. But I don't think it's crazy to say that like Western players on average, like from the contender scene, practice less coming into OWL compared to their Korean counterparts. So I think for Koreans, it's like I think there's a big emphasis on experience. And obviously the only way you get experience is through adding additional scrim block, right? You don't whereas I think Western players, they like, okay, well, by the third block, we're not really like a Western way of thinking is like by the third block, we're not really fully into it. Like we're kind of like burned out. Like, is the practice really that valuable? Why don't we, wouldn't it be better for us to take a break or to VOD review, be efficient with our practice time? Yeah. Whereas I think for a lot of Korean players, it's it's like, if we're not doing well, we got to work more. If we're not getting the results we need to scrim harder. We need to scrim more. We need to put in more time into the game, as opposed to like they VOD review too. Like, don't get me wrong, like Koreans VOD review a lot. Like, but they also, I think that's like the central philosophy difference. Like, we need experience to learn, as opposed to we can conceptualize things and learn better via like top down, or like someone reviewing our stuff, pointing out mistakes, and then going back into the game.
Interesting. We talk about hero pools a lot, and we talk about bans and alternative systems. So we're not going to go on it any further here. I do want to talk a bit more about yourself, Albert, as well as the Way, the 2020 Florida Mayhem, as well as the Overwatch League. But let's start with the Melee, and that is. This is kind of an interesting question. A person that we wanted to talk about was BQB. In the beginning of the season, I think BQB was really under the microscope as somebody who people felt wasn't cutting it in that hit scan role, specifically on like McCree. But I would say especially during Melee, we've seen a complete 180 on that, and we saw BQB perform really well on those different heroes that it appeared that he was struggling on before. Do you have any sort of insight as to why you think that was, or why the perception was that way? If you feel like that wasn't necessarily his fault in the early on games.
I don't think his McCree was bad since the beginning of the season. I think it's been fine. You look at the stats. Yeah, we lost, but it wasn't BKB's fault. I mean, don't want to like throw out the rest of the team on the bus. Like the rest of the team, that's not what I'm trying. So I'm just saying he performed well. Like we lost against Philly early on. You see his stats on McCree. You saw the way he was moving about the map, like the flank high noon on Lijiang Garden. Like he was making big plays for us. We didn't win, but I could see it there. Like the mechanics were there. We wouldn't play him on McCree otherwise. Like if he was really that big of a liability to McCree, like we would have just put Sayaplayer in. It's not like it's not like we only had one option to play McCree in the beginning of the season. He played McCree because our team performed the best, or KuKi thought the team performed the best with him in the lineup, and that's why he's there. So I I definitely agree that he really peaked in the main melee tournament. Like he was the best Ashe by like a country mile in terms of stats, like like almost every single category, like bob placement, like besides crit, I think, which is like not very relevant, like final blows damage, like he was leading them all by a long shot. So definitely, I definitely agree he performed at his best like that we've ever seen in the main melee tournament, but I disagree that he was ever performing poorly on McCree early on in the season.
Yeah, I think it was more just a narrative coming into the season that it was like, okay, this is a flex player, not somebody, somebody known for Sombra, not somebody who we would see normally play above Sayaplayer, and to see that and his performance going into the early seasons, the early regular season games was definitely an interesting trend. And I'd agree. Like, I didn't think he played all that poorly. I will say that it was tough to get a read on specifically his playstyle, because especially at the beginning, you guys had, I believe it was Chris, kind of like play as a bodyguard for him. So he did get a lot of space. He had some resources put into him. So it was tough to see, like, okay, like what if they played a less resource intensive style around their McCree? Will he perform that same way? We get to the main melee. It looks like he has blossomed into a very fully fledged, kind of full DPS where he can play a little bit of flex, but can shine on that hit scan. So it's been a nice growth from preseason thinking, I don't think he'll play over Sayaplayer, to, he can hang, he can play against some of the best and look really, really good. So again, hats off. This whole podcast, I feel like would be like, you know what? You did a great job. I don't know what else to say.
No, I keep looking at my calorie counter going,
dang it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Public perception preseason, like, totally agree. That was definitely a thing. Obviously, I saw different, which is why I kept BQB. And just happy it turned out the way it did. Well, I kept him because he was super flexible. Did I think he'd be the best Ashe in the league in the main melee tournament? No, like I couldn't. I'm not going to say like I knew he was going to be the best hit scan in a monthly tournament. I'm not going to say that. But I definitely knew he'd be above average. Very flexible. He can play multiple heroes in case we needed swap. Moving in hero pools, I thought it was, we just need flexibility. I think that's the name of the game for the league right now.
Most definitely. It's been a nice coming of age. And to kind of a similar point, one of the big criticisms we had going against this roster was Chris, and I think he had a fantastic performance this melee. Not something that I think was I could point to as necessarily a liability. I don't think he blew my socks off, but the comparison to then and now has been night and day. And looking at another criticism I had of this roster was like, okay, well, KuKi had some player experience and he's coached RunAway for that one season, but is he really a coach? Can we really justify or looking at the experience he has, is he a strong coach yet? I can't fault him with this performance and the growth that this team has had. I think everybody is just leveled up in a way, and it's been really, really nice to see.
Well, for KuKi, like I agree, like going in, it's the RunAway was winning everything before KuKi joined, right? Like that's exactly. That's just the case, right? So I understand from the outsider's perspective, it's like, okay, well, it doesn't really matter who the RunAway's coach is; they're going to do well because their players are just insane, right? Which is very valid. Like logic, because you look at contenders, I think across just any region, it's like usually people like to attribute success to the coach, but whether or not, like, I know there's been really good teams that have had very poor coaching. Like it's just a player run team, right? The coach doesn't really do anything, but gets to take the credit. I think that happens. And with RunAway, it was like, okay, well, they're already doing well, so it's like, why do they, how much did KuKi add value to the team, right? Valid thinking. But again, that's my job to look at as a general manager. Interview. I interviewed like 20 plus coaches in the off season. Like I went to Korea, I went to the Gauntlet. I talked to these people like one-on-one, not one-on-one because we had a translator. Obviously, I don't speak Korean. But I talked to them, face to face. Got to know them, like how they coach, what their philosophies are on the game, what they thought was wrong with their team. Like I interviewed so many coaches, and then KuKi passed, went, like, KuKi was very impressive. I was very impressed with him as a coach. And plus, we wanted RunAway players, and the two RunAway players that we wanted were like, we want to be coached by KuKi. And also Fate wanted to be coached by KuKi too. So it was just like, it was kind of a perfect perfect marriage, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
What can you talk about? What distinguished him for like? What is he really good at? What do you think he excels at as a coach?
I think it's just I think the style of coaching is perfect for the hero pool stuff right now, because he emphasizes enabling players to make the correct read. Because for Overwatch, as opposed to other esports, like the players, like there's no coaching. Like you can't, like seriously, you can take a timeout and like berate players, like, hey, like you're missing this, like refocus. You can't do that in Overwatch. In Overwatch, they're on their own for the entirety of a map. You can't, and when you pause, it's only for technical reasons. There's no tactical pausing in Overwatch.
Yeah.
So you can't like tactically reset. It's all on the player. So I think, so his style of coaching is like he tells players like he was a player himself, right? So he coaches them in the way that like he wishes he was coached, or in the way he would like to be coached as a player. And I think it works, really effectively. So it's a lot of like concepts, combos, understand, like working on the basics, and then adding on stuff from there. So it's like, okay, how do we execute an Orisa pull? Like, let's first start with a basic like Orisa pull into accretion. Then after we master that, let's add in other stuff. Let's add in like the Ash. Let's add in the Dynamite. Let's add in sticky bombs. And then once they understand that concept, then it's up to the players to then call it in game. Like, okay, this position, that position, this situation, like how to read situations live in the game and adapt on the fly. I think that's what separates a good team nowadays to like a bad team. A bad team's like, okay, well, we have this game plan, now it's all gone. And we have a very specific thinking on what we need to do. Whereas for us, it's like, okay, we have these heroes. As long as our players understand like what they can, like the basic plays they need to do to get value out of certain combinations, we have a chance to turn fights. Like no matter what the other team's running, we know what we have to do. We know what our comp can do, which I think is far more important than like set strategies. Like, oh, Hanamura attack, like we got to approach this way, rotate this way, very specific, and then boom. Like if we execute that perfectly, we're there. But in Overwatch, like you very rarely get to execute things the way you
conceptualize
ran it, yeah. Or in scrims, right? So.
So you agree with the kind of thinking that the game with hero pools has been evolved into much more composition win conditions rather than this big grandiose like micro on the map, swap these comps if then statements. Like it's become much more general understanding of what tools you have and how they work and what they're good at, right? Is that kind of am I synthesizing the right message?
Yeah, I think it's more. It's a little. You're forced to simplify it a little, just because everything's so complex. Like maybe it's counterintuitive to say simplification, but really it's like, okay, they have a tracer. Can we do the tracer 1v1? Like, is that working for us? It's like, okay, we have Yaki. Like that's fine. But maybe another team's like, no, like we're not going to win that tracer 1v1. Why even entertain that? Like, what we just swapped Torb, right? So maybe something like, I don't know if that's what Shock was thinking. I think Krusty said like. I think Krusty made an answer like I think he probably would have preferred something else than the Torb, but the Torb worked. But like that's the kind of thinking like a player needs to do on the fly. Like be very like understand their limitations as a player and the hero's limitations. Like okay, I can't play this hero. What's a better counter? And be able to make that decision because the coach is not there. You can't just be like, hey, like tac pause, like we're getting rolled. Like what do we do? You can't do that in Overwatch, right? You have to you have to adapt while you're getting rolled.
Going back to the Melee a little bit, you guys had a really impressive run. So you come in as the second seed, right? Which was, I think, already surprising enough as it was going in. But you go 6-1 in the seeding rounds, and you get the second seed, which means that you are. And so let me get so Shock draft Fuel, and then you draft Rain. Correct? That you were second to draft?
Correct.
I think that a lot of people found that first draft pretty surprising. The Atlanta Rain, I think especially pre-Melee, we're still floating in the top 3, top 4 discussions, although I would definitely say on this show they've fallen off. Can you tell us a little bit about the process and justification for choosing the Reign rather than the Gladiators or the Eternal?
Paris Eternal.
Well, publicly, I totally get the perception, right? They still had like a reputation going in, like they hadn't lost any matches that like were crazy, like upset losses going in. But for us, like we just thought they were the weakest team. Like we, in terms of our play style, like we just thought we matched up really well against them. We've been scrimming them for a while, so I think it was just, you know, we thought the matchup was favorable for us, and less unknowns. Like we knew what they were going to do. We knew that we saw their comp that they played the day before. We knew they were going to play Kodak, Dogband, Double Flex going in, and you know, no Erster. Like we just knew what they were going to play, and we thought our style, like we didn't need to adapt anything. We just like, okay, our comp, we believe our comps and our play style is just superior to the way they're playing right in their current form. So it was a simple decision from there. Like even if we had first choice, like we wouldn't have picked Dallas. We would have picked Reign first because we like the matchup. And also I think Krusty said he was leaning towards the Reign. Like he thinks if he had the weakest team on, like in his mind, like he probably would have picked the Reign. But I think he said something like, I don't know what kind of convoluted logic this is, but he was like, we picked Fuel because we wanted to get it out of the way. I don't know what that means. But it seems like he, from his, at least from the translation, that he also thought that Reign was a weaker of the four teams available. So
less explosive, maybe. What?
Yeah.
Not to kind of kill the author on that, but that's kind of an interesting tidbit. I wonder exactly why he wanted to get Fuel out of the way. Maybe it's explosive.
I mean,
decay factor. It's tough.
Christopher also said though that if they were gonna pick and they had the choice, that they would consider drafting Shock right away.
I mean, for other reasons. Yeah.
I mean, how could they get the Shock though? Because they're all top four.
Well, so that was the thing. He said if we could draft anybody, talked about wanting to be the best in North America, and he goes, you know, if it matches up in the bracket, we might want to draft the Shock because we want to know how good we are, and you're not the best until you beat the best.
I think the most interesting part was Paris falling to Valiant, all the way to just based on their form that day. But I think there's a logical explanation for that. I think like they're very well respected, like the coaching staff. You can't just, they're on bad form this day. Like it could be a totally different team the next day. Like you don't know. Like they didn't play very well either. Like the players, and it's like one off day does not necessarily translate into like a run of multiple off days in a row. So I think people still view Paris as dangerous, and I think Philly, like I was thinking, we were talking like we were watching, because we were drafting right after, and the Paris match was last, and I was like, so we draft Paris? I was like, probably not. Like we know, like we're confident enough in beating Atlanta. Like I don't know, like do we want to face a potentially good form Paris? And I thought I don't know. I think the answer to that was just we felt like Atlanta was a more stable like variable for us to figure out than Paris. Like maybe they're mad, maybe they're pissed off, and tomorrow they come out and the Paris that they could be, right? I think there's that. And then Philly probably was just like, well, we're tired of Philly. Like Paris brings us to mat 5 like every match, right? Like, why do that?
Seems like just a bad matchup.
Let's just get the other person, right? The other team.
Think that it probably is a pretty good idea. Like if I think about the justification that just Krusty gave, it's like, and I'm not sure, like that's the only thing I can think of is because the series are of different length between the final and the semifinal, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you give the credits to like the coaching staff or like the players of the Fuel that they would be more likely to claw into a series like that than the alternative opponents. That would be interesting thought, because I wouldn't think that would be the case. I would probably think the opposite would be the case, because the win condition for Dallas a lot of the time is like just breakout performances by Decay and Doha.
Yeah.
So
I will say, I think like the head-to-head there might lend itself to that. It might just be another one of those stylistic matchups where it's like Shock Fuel. They might just butt heads and play different sides of the same coin, and it might just get too scrappy for them to like convincingly beat them.
I think it makes sense if you're Shock and you think we're number one, we can beat anyone here. Why don't we just beat like the person that we think could be the highest threat first, since they don't have that much steam yet. Like, it was a very exhausting series the day before. It seemed like only Decay was popping off. Like, we know what we have to do: shut down Decay. We have ANS, like, they have ANS. Like, they don't have. It's not like they don't have a Widowmaker that I think can match up to Decay. And I think overall their team's probably a little bit stronger. And it's like, why give them more film? Because Shock hadn't played until they had a bye, right? So it's like, okay, like, let's not let Fuel counter strat us, or like let's just take him out first. I could see that. Like, that could be a possibility. But Krusty didn't really go much.
Yeah, he didn't.
That was going to be my thought as well, is that we know, like, kind of what the look that Fuel is going to bring you, and they played the Outlaws the day before, so you've already seen Fuel. So you draft them, Fuel don't really necessarily know what look you're going to give them. I honestly think that makes a ton of sense. Like, the Fuel have a little bit of Paris in them, right? Where it's like there's just there's a little bit of this wild card thing with you, where you kind of want to like control as much as you can around them. So anyways, you defeat the Rain pretty handily, I would say. And then you go in against the Fusion. So is this all according to your plan so far as the teams that you're going to have to face?
I mean, we knew the bracket, like, but at that, the only unknown was who we were going to play first before we had to hit Philly. We always expected Philly to come out of that match. So we expected to play Philly. For Atlanta, it was just like, we knew we could win. Just had to take care of business, make sure we get that win. Anything beyond that, like, we knew Philly was going to be much harder, or we thought. I mean, the scoreline was the same, but going in, like, we were, we definitely respect Philly. Like, I think everyone in the NA, or probably in the league, respects Philly and what they can do. They're definitely a good team. Like, they're no slouch. So, like, I see all the power rankings, like, yeah, Philly could have done better. Yeah, but I mean, you're probably right. But yeah, I mean, we were just a better team that day. But yeah, definitely going in, it was like, okay, we did what we have to do. Now it's like this. We went into it like as looking to upset, rather than like, oh, we got this in the bag.
Did you spend a lot of time that week preparing for that inevitable Philly matchup? Did you spend it all? I mean, I don't expect you to divulge too much, but every coach that we brought on so far that's talked about Melee is they usually have one or two opponents in mind that they're pretty sure that they're going to have to face, and they know that that's going to be the major hurdle. Was that the Fusion for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Fusion was like the big, like, after Fusion, it's like, okay, if we play Shock like close, like, that would be awesome already, and we did that, like, close enough, right? Like, we didn't go in like, okay, we beat Philly, like, now we'll be able to beat Shock. Like, we definitely thought we had a chance. But yeah, Philly's definitely like the elephant in the room that we had to encounter. In terms of preparation, I mean, again, like, I talked about KuKi's coach style. Like, we're focusing on ourselves. We're focusing on how our comp interacts with other comps. But like Philly, like, we knew we could tell by their swaps, like by their substitutions, what they were going to play. I don't know if we saw EKO playing Soldier on Gibraltar, but normally it's like, it was pretty like they're playing the same. We actually made them swap off double flex. Actually, they started playing some Brig Tracer. But we knew, like, based on their flex DPS, it'd be very indicative of what they're playing, and their off tank switch. They're putting Fury in for like dive. They're putting Poco in for poke. So we knew going in kind of how to read them. Like, we see Ivy, it's like, okay, it's gonna be Mei. We see EKO, it's gonna be Echo. So we kind of knew we had some advanced information that, like, that little bit of information. I don't know exactly what KuKi said, but I'm sure KuKi saw it. It was like, okay, remember, they're gonna do this. They're probably gonna do this. Let's remember, like, our core concepts on how we can beat this other comp, or how we need to play to win.
Interesting.
Did you guys feel like you came pretty early, or were quick to find this composition, that this Tracer hit scan kind of combo? That I would say kind of set a trend throughout the semifinals. Did you guys feel like, or did you feel like the team in general got ahead of the curve in that sense? Like you found that comp pretty early. It fit, all the players very well.
Yeah.
Would you say that kind of was indicative of you guys doing well? Was it more just, individual kind of comfort picks? What kind of really was the nail in the coffin in this Philly game?
I think it's both. Okay. We're very comfortable with the comp, obviously, and we got to practice it during the during the qualifying matches.
Yeah,
we were already playing Tracer Ashe, right? Like it wasn't a new comp for us, right? I think for some of these other teams, they probably saw like double flex support. They're like, wow, like that's pounding us in scrims. Like, okay, why don't we swap to that? Like you saw Atlanta, right? Like before this, Masa was still in the starting lineup, but then by the May Melee tournament, they're like, okay, we need 2 flex supports because like they just valued Kodak Zen, and they're like, okay, we need to run Zen Bap, Zen Bap. That's the comp we need to run. We think Kodak. We think Kodak's better than Masa and Zen. So let's do that. Whereas for us, it's just like, okay, we're gonna stick with what we know. We're gonna stick with because we think it plays very well into other comps, especially echo comps. I think a lot of teams kind of just I don't want to say slaves to echo, but I think a lot of teams like try to force echo too much, which is a thing. It depends on every new hero. Whenever new hero comes out, there's different like approaches to it. It's like, okay, this hero's OP, we must play it, and then there's like, okay, yes, this hero's OP, but we have more practice on the other heroes. We have better performance on the older heroes than incorporating a new one. So I think for us it's like, okay, they have Echo, we can also play Echo. Like we play Echo on Junkertown, right? But like we're just like, we have an Ashe, we have a Tracer has his backline, Ashe can check the Echo, like we're perfectly fine. Like that's just kind of how we philosophically went into the meta.
Do you think there is a world where in future tournaments, hypothetically speaking, with kind of new patches or maybe even new heroes, is there a world where the Florida Mayhem kind of has to kind of bend the knee in that way and say, well, yeah, this hero is just too good? Or is that just more of a philosophical difference, like you were saying, where no, I think we have that practice, we that's what we're going to double down on? Is it kind of, is there a difference, would you say? Is there a world where that could happen, or is that just kind of this is just how the teams run, this is what we're going to do? Does that kind of make sense?
No, I think we're very flexible though. Like you saw like our shot comp, we were playing Rhine, like Gargoyle and Rhine. Like we have a lot of different looks we can throw at people. It's just like you have to make us show you those looks, otherwise we're just going to run you over with our default comp. Which I think is an indicator of like don't mess with what's working, right? But we have other other comps, and we've shown them. Like it's not a secret, right? Like the Rhine and Lijiang comp that we ran, we played Torb a few times. We have Echo, like we played Echo Widow on Jokertown. So it's not like we can't play like Yaki's Echo's insane. It's just we're not forcing the Echo when we think there's better options for our team out there. Like when he's on his current form as like a world beating Tracer, like why not take advantage of that? Why not work with that? But yeah, I'm not worried. Like before that, everyone's like, oh, they're just May abusers, right? Like early on, they're like, oh, Yaki's just. Early on, it was like, okay, Yaki isn't good at May, and they're like, okay, well now Yaki's just a May abuser. And then now it's like, okay, well now Yaki's only good at he's
Tracer.
Once Tracer's banned, like he's gonna be useless. It's like no, we're fine. Like it's been said like multiple times, but like May, like he's got a huge hero pool, right? Like, and he's played May, Tracer, Echo, like all at a super high level. Like game-winning level, so we'll be fine.
Most definitely, and kind of tying or a nice callback to KuKi's entry into this team. Was that something that was kind of relayed to you in those interviews, that he had this mind of being able to hold a full set of cards in his hand and just play them one by one? Or is this something that you hired him kind of for, where he could adapt to a meta, he could kind of be a slave to the meta in that sense, or he can just take what he's given and really double down on that? Was that flexibility echoed, no pun intended, in the interview process?
I mean, it it is very hard to assess a coach fully unless you've seen them work in person. I think that's that's kind of like the art of an interview, just to figure out if they meet enough of the baselines that you're willing to take I mean, it's always a risk, right? Unless you've worked with them personally and you know how they, like, I've never worked with KuKi personally. So like I didn't have any background. Like some of these NA coaches, like I probably or I've heard through the grapevine on like the work habits, stuff like that. Like I have a little bit more information to work on to make my decision. With KuKi, just like talking, making sure you hit, like I already knew because I saw the gauntlet, right? I saw RunAway. Like, yeah, they lost, but it was clear, like, you know, they're playing meta. Like he can at least play meta, right? And that's like, I think that's like minimum for a coach. Coaching ability is like, okay, you can coach the meta. So I knew that going in. So then like all this stuff, it's like I'm the type of person, like the way I like to manage and hire is like I hire you because I think you're going to be good at your job, and then I trust you to be good at your job, and I give you like all the space you need to work. You know, I'm not the type that's like looking over shoulders and like, hey, like we can fix this, we can fix that. Like it's their process, and they need to be the ones to, you know, come to those conclusions and figure out what works for them. And he's definitely like evolved as a coach as well, like throughout the season, because he's never had a coach hero pools, right? Like that wasn't a thing before this year. So he's evolved. I think now a lot of coaches are at a place where they're like, okay, like screw the meta. Like we don't have enough time to even like refine the meta. What we do have enough time for, or, you know, what we do have a better chance of is refining what we're good at. And hoping that's it. I'm not hoping that's enough. That's very like pessimistic view, but like, and believing that it's enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, they might have a different comp, they might have different graphs on the meta, but how we execute our comp that works best for our team, you know, that's just gonna have to be enough for the match. And I think,
makes sense.
So last thing on the May Melee bracket, and then we've got so many questions about the 2020 Mayhem. We obviously switched not last minute or whatever, but relatively last minute. We switched to the May Melee tournament format. How did you like this monthly tournament format, just overall from a competitive standpoint, from a health of the game standpoint, from a not pull your hair out as a GM standpoint? How did you like the, you know, so what, 3 seeding weeks and then a big tournament single elimination weekend?
I liked it. Could it be improved? I mean, I don't think it's perfect, but I loved it. I think it brought back a lot of the excitement of Overwatch. It brought back their stakes. There's like anytime you have a structure that brings out the best in every team and every player, I think that's just a good structure. That's going to be good Overwatch. I think at the end of the day, that's what people, you know, want to see. And also like no hero pools, like, you know, there's no breaks, right? There's no guardrails. You can run whatever you want, right? These are truly like these are the best teams right now. No hero pools, nothing, you know. So yeah, I love the format.
Is there anything specifically that you would personally change?
I don't know about the tournament structure, but just I think it would be better to have longer hero pools. So like just the 2. Like I personally would like a kind of a 2-on-2 off. Like so the first 2 qualifiers are played on hero pools, on one hero pool. So like that already lessens the workload by it halves the workload on coaches and players. Because instead of having, you know, each week it's just one. So 1 over 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks is enough time. So like the objectives of hero pools is like to prevent stagnation. But I don't think 2 weeks is a long enough time for the metas to get stagnant. Like first week, people are still figuring stuff out. Then at the second week, it's like, okay, let's refine on those things that we've learned from first week. So it's still not like stagnant. It's still like not completely figured out. I think it's by like that third week where it's like, okay, well,
this is what's good.
Yeah, it's like first week, a bunch of teams played this. Second week, it's like, okay, we think these are better. These are meta. And then like some other team might come out with a counter. Third week, it's like, okay, now we know like this is just what teams are running. Because a lot of it is like you emulate what happens in scrims, right? So if you don't see anything but one comp in scrims, it's very hard to, you know, innovate when the scrims aren't innovative. But like when these hero pools, like people are experimenting like crazy, right? You see all types of different looks that you otherwise wouldn't. Enough, you know, when it's figured out. So I think 2 months, enough time, prevents like it's not going to get stagnant, and then 2 off. So you have 2 weeks again, like same concept. No hero pools, so like you have a week to initially, like, you know, that this is your first like rough draft of what you think the meta is going to be, and then the second week, championship week, or not championship week, but tournament week, it's like, okay, you've had a week to figure this out. Like now, let's truly see like with an additional week of practice, like which teams are the best, who's better prepared, which team looks better.
Did you have any feeling or opinions on the map pools? I know that was kind of a big point of contention where it was like preparing for 14 different map pools.
Yeah.
For, some different opponents was kind of stressful. It sounded like.
Yeah. I'd like it to be a little smaller. I don't know what that number looks like.
Right.
I haven't really put too much thought on the number, but I definitely think, too many maps. Also, I think it would help. Maybe you keep the same map pool, but just let people pick ban, or not pick ban, pick like loser pick. I thought that was great. And I would like that to be incorporated in like the qualifier matches as well, ideally. And there was a lot of 3-0s, right? And I think that's because both teams know the map's going in. If you just happen to be the better team, like or have the better comp, you should theoretically just win all 3 maps if you have a better grasp of the meta. Whereas, maybe introduce like loser pick. So then it's like, okay, we get to pick a map that we're really good at, and then we have a chance to win that way, even though our comp or our grasp of the meta or execution isn't as polished. But you have the advantage because this is like a home map for you.
Can I run a theory or like a theory or like a mode that I thought of for Hero Pulse by you? The problem is the complexities of that are probably, it's almost unfair to ask this in the moment because there's so much to think about. But okay, so if our premise is that we need Hero Pools to keep diversity in the metas that we're seeing, couldn't we conceive of a system where we just statistically look at, okay, we can identify the meta is getting rigid again because X percentage of teams are playing the very same 6 heroes, or we could even talk about like maybe it's 4 heroes that we don't want to see at the same time. We can talk about the parameters, but let's run, for instance, let's say Hero Pool switches on once 75% of all the teams play the same comps. And in that case, 4 of the of the 6 heroes are randomly banned. And then otherwise, if we have diversity by the nature of the character of the teams, that's what we want, right? That's the superior diversity, where everyone plays what they want to play. And if that then gets to stale because people aren't innovating for, possibly unknown reasons, but also very versatile reasons, that then switches on, and then we have a different meta established maybe in the next week. And then we could even talk about ban length of these hero pool bans based on that.
Maybe. I don't think there's enough time for me to kind of unpack that.
Yes.
And like go through all the, in my head, I guess the iterations are like the consequence of that, like, and its impact on the league. But in general, I think just anything that accomplishes the goal of limiting stagnation, or just making sure it can't happen. I think that would align with kind of the league goals and like viewership preferences, right? Obviously, I think for a lot of teams, not our team, because I think we're kind of embraced we're good. We're obviously clearly biased, right? Because it's like, okay, we're second place, right? So obviously we, status quo is fine.
Yeah.
Even though we're going to complain about the status quo, like, we're having good results. Whereas other teams that are like bottom are probably like, nah, like just give us a meta that we don't have to think, or just, stagnation's better than just getting blasted at a new meta, right? So, but I think ultimately anything that is kind of a compromise between, I think 1 week is too much, but I do definitely agree that there needs to be a way to limit or to ensure that teams don't get stagnant. And I think if you just no hero pool for an entire month, or even if you have the only way to prevent that is to have like the best balance patches. And I think, that's been a struggle. That's been a contention point. So I think hero pools is like probably the best Band-Aid solution that I can think of. It's just the implementation of that. That people are trying to fix or adjust.
Yeah,
all right.
I would agree. I would agree for the most part.
So
no snap on hero pools though. Get that out of here.
if you're listening or watching, this is the time to take a quick 5-second stretch break. So we're starting talking about the 2020 mayhem here, and I think we need to start first and talk about where the mayhem started this season to where they are now. Looking purely at just the final scorelines results, you guys started out a bit slow, going 2-4. Yiska and I were eating heavy, having a good time. Hams every day, just eating ham, just hams every day. And I know we were pretty critical of the Mayhem's opening performances on the show, specifically going 2-4. Did you expect to see the slow 2-4 start? And if so, what do you think contributed to that?
So I think only slightly disappointed in the 2-4 start. I think the only team that we lost to that we shouldn't have lost to was London. But otherwise, we won the games we were supposed to win on paper and lost the games we were supposed to lose on paper. The losses were obviously blowouts, which is not great. But going in, like, I don't think anyone could have expected us to actually win those games. Like, I didn't. I certainly didn't have expectations for us to win. She's like, okay, we can take a map, make it close. That's improvement. But didn't expect us to beat like Philly and Nixel, right? I believe we played Nixel. Didn't expect us to beat those and Atlanta, right? Those were like three of the top teams, and on our side of the division. What are the division that existed at the time? London. Yeah, London. Went the full distance, 3-2, so close loss. But definitely one that we had our shot at winning. We should have won that for sure. But we didn't. I think a little bit more concerning for me was the way kind of our team. We're just very passive in the 2-4 stretch before we kind of turned the Jets on and became like the mayhem that we are right now. And I think that's definitely part, like the turnaround's definitely a lot to do with KuKi and how he changed the team. But I think that's just the kind of a byproduct from the kind of cathartic way we played, like from past seasons. Like, just we have the core of our roster is mostly players from last season. So when you have that and they're used to like playing we were very passive last year because we were just a bad team. I think bad teams just naturally play more passive because they get scared. They're like, they're afraid to make mistakes. Where I think the good teams are like, they're not afraid to make mistakes. They're confident enough that, and they can capitalize, like they go aggressive and they make the other team make mistakes and they capitalize on the mistakes. It's kind of a snowball. Whereas we were like, I would just say we're just a shitty version of Nixel is how I would describe us playing in the 2-4. We were just slow, very cathartic. Just kind of waited for the team to int and then capitalize on their mistakes rather than trying to force them to make those mistakes and bring the fight to them. We just kind of let it come to us, see if they made mistakes, and then win from there. Kind of let them beat themselves essentially. Which is why we had a lot more like sustained, like bunker style, just slow, like just our pace was like glacial, I would say. So yeah, 2-4. That's why that happened. And then after that, KuKi told me like we just had them play like deathball stuff. We had them play like super aggro comps that they literally, if they did not play aggressive, they would just get snowballed like to oblivion. So we just worked on that, working our pacing there, like being a super aggressive team. And then that's why I was excited. Like the first, like when we started on that winning streak, like that first game, that I was like, wow, like we are out of the gates, like aggressive. Like we haven't seen this type of like pace ever in like franchise history. And like if you look at all the good teams, like their pacing is very fast. Like it's just like they just hit you. You don't have a chance to like think. They're just going. They know what they want to do, and they go do it. And then you just have to deal with it. So I think that was like the biggest change.
So I think that really was pretty apparent in your 3-0 win over Paris. Like you're saying, that was that big stretch. And I think that was brought up a lot on the show, that people were being, very excited for the Mayhem. They're coming out, they're beating Boston, you're beating the teams that you should beat. But I don't think people really put a lot of emphasis on that Paris win, because it was decisive. It was fast, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And, they can come out and kind of spin it like, oh, we didn't really have a good read. It was hero pools. But beating a team like that after kind of having a shaky start, definitely puts you on the trajectory that, you're now on. And there was a lot of kind of dead air in that sense where, your qualifier matches weren't the hardest, and it was tough to get a good read. But looking back at that Paris game, everything that you're saying definitely matches up.
I think pace transcends hero pools, like the way you play and and like also I think I forgot who was talking about, but someone's saying like confidence is like very important. I think that was the middle interview actually that I read, where he was
also
he was, he was talking about
the idea was from Christopher. Then I injected that into the mineral interview.
And we're injecting that into this interview now. So
spread the church of confidence.
I think for bad teams it's like it's hard to build up that confidence. So we were a bad team last year. It just takes time to have them understand like how to win, how to play the game properly again. Because you get abused for a year. It's tough to get out of that mindset. Like I think they had to, like a lot of our players probably had, like, am I good enough for the league at some point?
Sure.
And I think to get to the point where you're like, okay, I am good enough, and like I'm actually better. I'm actually better than this guy. That like mental switch is like such a big deal. Like I see not that Gargo didn't pop off stage 4, but like this year, like he's just very aggressive, like very confident in the way he plays. He's like 1v, like he's 1v3, 1v-Xing. It's just, it was great.
So, I think you kind of answered the next question. We're going to kind of talk about how you turned it around into, whether you look at it a 2-4 start or a 3-5 start, and then, a 6-1 ending versus a 5-0 ending. Is kind of however you want to split it, however you want to cut that PB and J.
Yeah.
But let's talk about something a little bit more recent, and that's Sayaplayer. Mm-hmm. So Sayaplayer announced he'd be heading home to South Korea for a persisting health problem. Can you provide any more insight? Sounds like he's been working through this for a long time. We know that his playtime has definitely been split among a lot of really great people on the Mayhem roster. So like, what can you tell us about Sayaplayer, his performance this season, and then going back to South Korea?
I don't think it's my place to kind of divulge, his health issues. I think that's a personal decision for him if he wants to speak out about it and provide more detail. I don't have anything to say on that other than it's just not my place to divulge that information.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely,
makes sense.
Cool.
Do we talk about the newest signing on the Florida Mayhem? Is that where we shoehorn this in? Because I know chat's super jazzed about this one. Do we talk about Mr. Sideshow coming in with a quick 14? I don't know how this stuff happens, man. 2020 is a hell of a year.
So how did that really originate just like on Twitter, and then you guys took it from there?
Yeah, it was just like a normal interact. Like Dom started with Dom, right? Dom was just memeing around, posting like his gold highlight clip, right? I was like, so that's where I was like he probably would not be able to land like a single rocket, let alone 2 rockets to kill Yaki. So I was just like, what you like, dude? Like you land one, like you're signed. Because I knew he wouldn't. I've seen Yaki play back preseason boot camp when Fair was still meta coming off the gauntlet. I've seen scrim blocks where he hasn't lost a single Fair duel entire map. Sometimes like multiple maps. So I was like, there's just no way. So yeah, that's how that happened. And then Sideshow, I guess, saw an opportunity to kind of like throw himself in there. I was like, interesting concept. Like, I did not think he would actually get to 5 kills. I'll be honest. But we did that, and I was like, okay, 4K contract, like a minimum contract, obviously.
Yeah.
I got that approved. I was like, okay, John, like Ben, like this is hilarious. Like, this is a great opportunity.
How do you explain that to a lawyer like that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this is hilarious. Like, I don't even know if Al will approve this. But like, do I have your permission to like commit us to like drop it to 2K? Right. Essentially, I was like, okay, it's basically if he wins
2K Sideshow. Got it.
Yeah, it's just just donating 2K to charity, right? It's just a charity. Sideshow's a charity case, essentially. So I was like, we could donate 2K to charity, right? Like we can give a 2K contract. That's fine
for the content.
Yeah. And then I thought it'd be a fun event. And it's our players' break. Kind of a fun event. I didn't know how big it was gonna get. I was like, okay, maybe like 2K, 3K. But I think peak was like 9. It was something crazy like 9K.
Yeah.
Without like any the only thing we did to advertise this was like a few shit posts on Twitter and like I guess a few Overwatch Reddit posts, and we got 9K people watching. Like I think Avast had to turn on his stream abruptly because he thought it was gonna be an hour later. Did have some graphics prepared. It was just a fun event. And it got way bigger than I thought it was gonna be. And then the actual event itself, the 1v1 itself, was just you couldn't have scripted it any better, honestly. It just the way it all panned out, and Sideshow legitimately hit those 2 rockets at the end. That wasn't Yaki trying to. That wasn't Yaki standing in place. He was, Sideshow hit two good rockets to seal the deal for the 5th kill.
Wow.
Unreal.
Does this open up, the space for more kind of creative ways to get content out of this game that kind of has been slow to really not adapt but innovate in in a way, right? Is this the GOATs, transition? Is this stage 4?
This guy actually doesn't like Overwatch. He just wants people to get cream pied in the face. Yeah. That's his peak entertainment.
I think anything right now, we need some content, and that was content for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a new concept. I think it's just the first time it was done online. Bren last year, I think he was challenging everyone and their mother to 1v1.
He did. Right? He's like the kid.
For zero, there wasn't even stakes attached to this. It was just we're just gonna 1v1, and it's for what? There's 0 stakes, and he was just challenging people. There's 0 incentive. But this was a fun bet. Yaki gets something if he wins. Sideshow gets something if he wins. Everyone's entertained. They have incentives to kind of put on a show, to do their best. I think Sideshow, I was on his stream the night before, and he was just one-tricking Pharah in preparation for hours on end. In plat, ulting lamps and stuff. It was just a fun time. I think it's harmless. It was just a harmless event. Don't think anyone's hurt.
No.
Sideshow. It's not like Sideshow.
Yeah,
and it's also not like Sideshow's taking up a roster slot. I saw some comments he's not. Even if I wanted to sign other people, we have roster slots for that. We're not capped by having Sideshow, and plus we're an all Korean team, right? I cannot sign anyone that needs a visa.
Yeah, I think
Yaki
the only
has a
argument
Pharah coach for 2 weeks.
The only argument that people were making is the sanctity of the OWL contract, that it's really hard to get there, and then it's devalued or whatever. But especially due to this being in the break where his 14 days end before
literally
reasonably ever.
If he actually plays in the match, I would totally that's when you can be this is disrespectful. 100% would be disrespectful. I would never. We wouldn't put Sideshow in a match. That's just a line. That's the line, right? You don't cross that line.
Yeah. I
Sorry,
also don't
Sideshow,
think we have
if you're
teams
listening right now. If you had any hope there, getting that contract extended, or anything like that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think also the bottom teams currently are actually trying a lot. And I think there's not even a team you could feasibly do it against in good conscience. All the bottom teams, is including Boston, definitely.
Yeah, Boston's not slouching by any means these days. So one's
Washington is upgrading. Okay, Titans, but even then you gotta.
They're getting better. A little bit.
It's just a lose-lose, right? Chips is different. He's not a plat.
No.
We're literally gonna be us putting inside is equivalent of 5v6ing.
Yes, literally.
And it's if we win, it's you're probably ruining some people's careers. That's really messed up. And if you lose, it's just okay, you just threw you literally just threw an owl map. Either way, either of those scenarios is just messed up. So not something we would ever do.
Yeah.
So, and it's weird too because it's if I'm correct, this isn't completely devolved from traditional sports. you could be signed to like 1-day contracts in hockey, and like there are
in
these
hockey, there is a backup goalie that is
goalie,
not
right?
on your roster. Like it was a magical thing. I can't remember when
not too
it
long
was.
ago. I remember seeing it.
Not long ago, like some 42-year-old like groundskeeper style goalie dude comes in and plays in like a playoff game or something.
Yeah.
So
this isn't completely devolved. So it's like, I hope these aren't the same people who are like, traditional sports does this, so we needed. It's like, whoa. Like, we have to, if you're gonna present the pie, you need to eat it too. Like, come on now. Like, this isn't, no, nothing's being disrespected. Just like Albert's saying, like, nobody's taking up a roster spot. They're on a break. This is just for content. Like, it's not that serious, guys. Come on now.
Yeah. We're just here to entertain you guys during the break.
Yeah,
but,
come on.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to.
I do want to take not a somber turn. That's the wrong term, but I do want to take a moment and talk about just overall player health. So we had you on the show earlier on, and we talked about your transition middle last season to a full Korean roster. Obviously, we saw the fall of the Titans this year. A full Korean roster who there's so much to go into why that roster fell apart and why, the Titans organization fell apart. But there is an increased microscope, especially under full Korean teams here living here in the United States. COVID happening, hero pools happening. There's just a lot of just crazy circumstances here that makes the mental and personal health of players, especially Korean players in Overwatch League right now, more challenging than ever. Can you give us some insight into how the Florida Mayhem are approaching that and doing what appears to be a pretty dang good job at keeping players happy and healthy and in a mindset to win and just kind of all of that?
At the end of the day, it's making them feel comfortable. And I think it helps that like I've had experience building like mixed rosters, Korean rosters. Like my first like professional roster build was Energy, and that was a mix of people, a mix of I'm trying to think. Did we have any? Yeah, we did have Koreans. Yeah, it was a mix of Koreans and Western players, and I made sure to get a coach that was bilingual enough in both languages. So 9K, like I've been developing structures like for a while, that would suit, Koreans and like multi-nation teams. So it's nothing new to me. It's just obviously I've gotten better. So while I was with, Energy building like their roster, I also, advised and consulted on like the shock pickups. So like, I think, there's Junk Buck and then like it's the Koreans that they picked up, so Architect Choi, and then they got Krusty. Krusty had nothing to do with, but yeah, like they were set up for success because they had someone there that could communicate act as a liaison. Like I think it's so important to have someone that understands Overwatch as well. Like Junkbuck's bilingual, right? So they can go back and forth. Eventually move 9K up, so they had two bilingual coaches. Krusty's also, almost basically bilingual as well. So they just have three solid coaches that can act as like a bridge. Plus their GM now, Chris is fully bilingual as well. I don't know if they have a dedicated translator, but I don't think they do they don't need it at this point. One of the few teams that probably don't need one, just because all four of their staff members can speak English and Korean at a decent level, and their players are at a point where like their English is pretty good. So I think it's so yeah, I learned those lessons, and just applied it to Mayhem. Like, okay, we're going full Korean. What do I need? Just teleport myself to Korea. Like, what would I need? What would I need to feel comfortable in Korea, right? And it's like very simple. I want someone that's from the U.S. ideally, can speak both languages, understands the culture, like can guide me through stuff, help me do what I need to do, help me live a life in Korea. So it's the same thing in the U.S., right? It just flip it around. So we already had we started that process last year. Like we had a bilingual manager, so David, our team manager. Then we had the Valiant, the old Valiant translator for a bit, Korean Mulan. And then he got I think he was working for a game developer, I think he's running for a game developer now on translation stuff. But then this off season, we're like, okay, we need to, I wanted to have two, because I think it's a lot of work for just one team manager plus translation, because everything needs to be translated. Because the difference is I can't speak Korean, so management, like any interactions I have with the team need to be translated. So we had to have two, get a chef. I think chef's important to make them feel at home cooking. Like all the Koreans that I've met, they're, most of them, they just want to eat Korean food, which is fine.
Makes sense.
Like, I'm sure. I mean, I'm a little different as a person. Like if I'm in Korea, I'll be just as fine eating local, like Korean food cuisine. But I know a lot of I know a lot of fellow Americans that they go to another country. They're like, what's the first thing they go to? They go to like a McDonald's.
McDonald's. Yeah, live at McDonald's. Yeah.
I like so many like study abroad programs I've been to. Like Americans will just eat American food in the foreign. I'm like, to me, that's like crazy.
Yeah, it's boring, but you understand it.
I think after enough time, I'd be like, man, I could go for a burger. But yeah, for at least the very long time, I'd be like, nah, man, give me all this good stuff.
Right, exactly. Especially for players that aren't the most worldly. I say, like, this is their first experience with a foreign country, right? Like they don't have the time to develop like a palate or like an advanced palate. Like, and I'm not paying them for that. I'm not paying them to have a wide, a large palate for food. So it's like, okay, fine, we'll get a chef. We'll cook you, nice Korean food, make you feel at home. Two managers that speak Korean, help you assist with day-to-day life on top of like managing, so they have their voices heard. KuKi speaks very good English as well, not fluent, but I think he gives himself less credit, less credit than
his skills actually show. He can definitely hold a conversation.
Yeah. But so it's like it's just the structure's there, and I think as long as the structure's there, the other pieces fall into place. As long as you just have to show players that like you've thought of them, right? You didn't just like drop them in. It's like, okay, play Overwatch, like win games. It's like that's not how you manage people. You have to like, it's my job to think proactively and make sure like everything is set up for them to succeed. Also, like they all have their own rooms. There's they're not they're not sharing rooms or anything like that.
They have a computer.
And I made sure to they have a computer in their rooms. Everyone has a computer at home in the room, and then a computer at the facility. So they have two computers. Just making sure they have everything they need to be comfortable and play Overwatch.
I don't want to throw anyone under the bus with that question, and I think it's a legitimate one that every org that has a full Korean roster has to answer in some way. And I'm not sure how much you're involved in the business side of things, but how do you market your roster towards a local fan base, towards a global fan base, potentially? Of course, you also get some of that RunAway energy with those players.
Yeah.
KuKi, like there's a lot of story in your roster, generally also with Fate and with KuKi.
Right.
How do you market that? How do you turn this into something that friends can get behind?
I think there's a lot of different things, and not all of them even require money. Like Swingship does a great behind the scenes like series on Twitter, and it's like that small thing which just takes up like all that is just being around the players, catching up on something. She does she's really good at storytelling in that format, so that helps a lot, right? Like she's good at that.
Very much agreed. Yeah.
But like just those little snippets of like, oh hey, like these guys are funny. Like these guys aren't just robots that play the game.
Heads.
Right. You got to humanize
Yes.
them, and I think
yes,
having content series with them, getting them to answer questions in Korean, and then translating them. I think there's different ways you can do that. I think Nixel, for a period of time, like you watch their content, they're Korean, like they do a good job, but I think they try to incorporate more English. Whereas I think either way, I think it doesn't matter if it's in Korean or English, as long as what they're saying it shows a bit of their personality. A little harder to do with COVID now, but I think just also for us, we've been such a bad team that honestly, like if these guys had personality, obviously, but if they had zero personality, all they did was win, they'd already be marketable. I would say, just compared to the Floridas of the past, of seasons past. So Yeah,
I mean, you did a good job with the whole walkout thing in the past in season 1 with
I personally have mixed feelings about that. Because I'm a competitive person, so like for me, it's like, do I want, like, do I even like, do I care that one of the worst teams in the league does walkouts? Like, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Would I
Yeah.
I'd rather be a fan of London Spitfire. Like, I mean, they did walkouts too, so that's a bad example.
Literally, I don't think any other team has done. So.
Yeah, I named the one other team in the league that's like a winning, right? Like something absurd. But yeah, some other team that wins that doesn't do walkouts. You know, it's like I care more about them winning than anything else. So like Nixel did a great job, right? Like Nixel, they just won and they did it well, dominated fashion, MVP. Like they marketed their players well, and I think, I think the blueprints there, like how to do it, is there. You just have to learn and adapt it for your own market or for your own fans. And I think now, like that, we're at a place where I don't feel like I have fires to put out every day. Like last year, you know, when you're on a bad team, there's fires every day, like different fires, raging fires, and you're just like, okay, we need to get this guy. We just need to like get this guy in like a mental state where they can actually play, right? And they're not like worrying about other stuff. But now it's like at a place where we can work on expanding the community. So like Swingship recently started, like, because we have a lot of Korean players, right? So it makes sense that they probably have Korean fans. Like we should reach out to Korean fans, like not just be focused on, you know, only Florida. So like our Discord now has like a Korean section that we just started up, and you know, connect with those fans. I think it's just important to reach the fans like where they are. I think that's how I like to think about things. Like make it easy, like points of touch where they can come to you and find you easily. I think is the most important.
Yeah, I think that was also one aspect that was always very impressive about NYXL is they definitely humanize their players, but they also do content that to a degree mythologizes them. Like you just see Jonek sit down for an hour.
Oh yeah,
being the immovable object.
Right.
You have these amazing cinematics, like these videos, you know, like epically walking through New York in some way or whatever, right? Like there's like this twofold path in how they market in that regard.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that needs to be the same thing. You also definitely need a team that wins. Like you can't be mythological about the Shanghai Dragon season 1. But yeah, that like there's definitely different ways, and I think now your socials also seem to be embracing the, you know, the wackier, like humorous side of things in a different way, and like carving out these unique identities for the team. I think does a great job. It's just challenging, and I empathize with finding these avenues.
Well, I was like, Nixel does it a little differently. I believe they're still working with Level 99, so they have an agency that does all this as opposed to like in-house. Whereas for us, like we're a little different because we do it in-house. We don't have, we're not paying another agency to like come with like these, like Level 9 does such a good job. But like they're not cheap, right? Like they're a premier, like that level is like, it's super polished, right? And that like props next, like they're investing in doing that. But our, you know, we're kind of doing it more grassroots, like Swingship's helping out. Our content team is all in-house, and they're the ones making like the memes, the Instagram posts, the studio content. Like we're doing it out of with our own people that we hire full time.
Also, grassroots talent coming out of the community, not coming in the community, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think for us, it's just I value people that like. It's nice that our content people also came from the scene and are also passionate about Overwatch. And I think that's like, I think if I could say one thing about like our staff, it's like everyone loves Overwatch, and I don't think that's something you can say about many other teams, right? It's like, it's another job. Like I was on the parent org and I just got thrown onto the. It's like, okay, now you're Overwatch League now. It's like, okay, well, I didn't really
like
ask for this. Yeah, it's like actually like Counter-Strike more, or whatever the case may be. But I think that's like a strong aspect. Like when the passion's there, the work, like it shows in the work. It shows in the productivity. I think that's very important.
Very esports, very grassroots, very endemic. It's a good thing.
I always fear being given like an NFL team PR address to contact, because I definitely already know how important I am to them. That like if my email shows up, right? Like
yeah. Oh, this is a fun one, guys. Going long again. You know, we're on the break. We can go long now. We don't have to battle with 30 hours of Overwatch to watch over the weekend. We're just like, you know what? We can do a 2-hour show. Let you consume it over the week and you'll be all right. Chat, I hope you had a ton of fun today. Thank you so much for hanging out. You guys are the best. Albert, before we go, we always like to give coaches, representative teams, an opportunity to give a message to their fans, just about the team, anything else, just like, you know, speak directly to them. So what do you got?
Yeah, you know, again, thanks to all our fans that have been here from day one. But you know, I'd be remiss to not welcome all the bandwagoners that have now appeared on Reddit, in our Discord. You know, Sideshow fans. You know, whatever the reason you have for becoming a Mayhem fan, like, you know, we accept it all. You know, there's no fan discrimination here. So everyone's welcome. Hop on the bandwagon if you want. You know, hop off of it if you want. But you know, just have a good time. Like, watch good Overwatch. Hopefully, you know, we keep the results coming.
Awesome. And where can people like find you personally, like your socials and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on Twitter. I don't know the next time I'll be making a trash talk tweet. That seems to be where all my followers come from nowadays. But you know, that might have been a one-time case, a one-time thing. But yeah, follow me on Twitter. yeHHH, 3 H's. And you know, I'm streaming a little bit more now. Don't know how long that's gonna last. But same thing, yeHHH on Twitch and on Twitter.
Awesome. Chat, thanks for being here, and a big thank you to our patron producers: Battlecrab, Pin, Lochin, Charlie L, Audio Compass, Porkchop, Sammy, Kasha 67, Kuchi Kopi, Shar, Picasso, Nathan, Your Misery, Hunter Tane, Refine Bean, and Rex Zane. Getting really good at that at this point. Thanks so much for supporting the show. Patreon.com/Tactical Crouch if you want to support. No new patrons this week, but we did get a new sub. Did we not, Yiska?
We did, and it's Coppers, which I recognize to be like one of the guys that follow us for the betting odds, and who also therefore hates Chengdu, of course, because of the results they do. So thank you for the sub.
And 5-star iTunes reviews, Joe.
We've got D Hulky coming in. I believe that is the host of, funnily enough, the Fantasy Esports podcast that kind of is primarily about Overwatch. So if you're into that, definitely go give that a look-see. And thank you, D Hulky, for the 5-star iTunes review.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, if you like the show, you can sub right here, twitch.tv/KickedTripod, or go leave a 5-star iTunes review. We really do appreciate that support a ton. Individual shout-outs for the week, and where can people find you very quickly, Yiska?
As always, on my Twitter at Yiska out, and then on GG Recon. Short week because Germany as always is lazy, so I had a day off today, and I'll have a day off next week too. So, but
look at you.
Yeah, we take it. And then at the end of the month, I have an entire week off because that's my holiday. I'm not working really. Germans don't work.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, it's basically like, yeah, you have national holidays and then some sort of socialized. Free money, right? It's just free money everywhere, raining, like picking off the trees. You just grab it. That's your job, basically, is just grabbing the money off of the trees, putting it in a basket, and going and buying a bratwurst. Basically, if I had to sum up German life, that's how I understand it.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Joe, what about you?
This week we've got just posted a review of Europe's best Valorant team, and somehow they still don't have a home. So go check that out if you're new to Valorant or want to get into the esports space as the game releases tomorrow. As for Overwatch, we're writing stuff. Stay tuned.
I have an Into the Misfits organization if you want to pitch Fish 1, 2, 3 to them. Joe,
maybe.
I can give you a hand. Sweet. Yeah. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. Just the normal stuff. Tactical Crouch, Monday, Wednesday at noon. Twitch.tv/KickedTripod. Spike Drop on Fridays at noon, twitch.tv/KickedTripod, and at youtube.com/Spike Drop. That's going to do it for us, chat. We don't have time for a post show today, but hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something new. Hope you went and bought a bunch of Florida Mayhem jerseys.
Sideshow jerseys.
Sideshow jerseys. I'll tell you, they're not going to be up there for long. So go make sure to get those. Other than that, we'll see you on Wednesday for another show. We might have a surprise. We might not. I'll let you know. Just don't miss it. Monday, twitch.tv/KickedTripod, or Wednesday, sorry, twitch.tv/KickedTripod. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.